crime is everywhere and consistently on the rise. Quick and easy cases are solved daily, but what of those other cases? The ones that have gone cold with no new leads or information. The famous serial killers have been captured and made public. But what of those still on the loose? Or even worse, still killing? Welcome to the realm of darkness. Your host, Reeni and Ashley, will be your guides into the mysterious world of true crime cases and stories. Here are your hosts, Reeni and Ashley.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Realm of Darkness. I'm Reeni, obviously.
And I'm Ashley.
So I'm gonna let Ashley kind of give us a rundown on what we're gonna talk about this evening.
Well, it's gonna be really interesting. We have a show all revolved around one of America's most disturbed and infamous serial killers, Jeffery Dalmer. So he was, want me to just jump right into it?
Jump right into it. Just do it. Cause like she had it, I know we weren't on last week, because of weather. We gotta love Illinois weather. And she like did everything. So I just kind of figured to let her just kind of take over and I'll just ask questions as we go.
Okay. So when I was researching Jeffrey Dahmer and like the different cases, it's kind of interesting because there's a couple of things that I didn't even know. So he was actually born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he lived there until he was about 8 years old. What a lot of people don't know is when his mother was actually pregnant with him, it was probably right around the second trimester, she actually started having medical issues and developed seizures. And the only way the doctors knew how to handle that was to prescribe her morphine and narcotics. So when I was reading into the effects of that type of medicine, you know, clearly it can affect the fetus and the growth of it. And throughout all the research, I was kind of wondering, like, did that affect his mental health issues and everything going forward? But yeah, his mom was on morphine and narcotics throughout the rest of her pregnancy. And then a little bit after he was born, he was about 8 years old when he moved to Ohio, and everyone described him as a really happy kid, and he was close to his dad. There was no red signs. He was just really energetic and wanted to be just like daddy. But when he was about 4 years old, he actually had a double hernia surgery, and they had to put him under anesthesia. And when he came out of that anesthesia is when his parents kind of noticed a little bit of a difference in him. He wasn't as energetic. He wasn't as happy, a little bit more lethargic, kind of more withdrawn. And they noticed like that's kind of when his personality started to change, was at 4 years old.
And I'm going to throw this out there because I'm going to just throw this out there. Again, don't move to Wisconsin. All these serial killers come from Wisconsin. You know, I was going to say it.
I did. I was waiting for it.
And I was like, I'm going to let her finish her sentence. Like, it's not a funny type laughing matter, but
no, when I saw that he was, because I mean, I'm from Ohio, and Jeffrey Dahmer's known for living in Ohio, and it was Bath, Ohio. So when I saw that he was actually born in Milwaukee, it was a surprise to me, and I was like, I got to tell Reeni. I have to tell her right now.
Because you knew I was going to say, of course. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm going to ask you this, and you probably haven't gotten to it yet, obviously. But I was watching this it's not even a documentary, it was like a movie. It was like I Am Dalmer or something like that. Mm-hmm. I was watching it today. Is it really true that he tried to take animals and drop them in acid to see if they would dissolve? Do you know?
So yes, toward the end, when he first started, his first killing was at age 18. It was in 1978, right after he graduated high school, and he didn't mean to do it. And everybody assumes that from the very first killing, he was eating his victims and all that. And he wasn't. It wasn't till later in his process, I guess you can say. I wasn't later into the murders and things is when he actually got into acid, and he started to do different experiments to see how the human body would respond to different acids, different materials, to see what was the best way for him to actually get rid of the parts that he couldn't use.
So was technically like, was his dad a chemist? Because that's what I've seen. But you know how some of those things, when you watch something, you're like, okay, that's probably not true. Well, anyways,
Yeah.
I was just I wasn't sure if you knew that or not.
I didn't look into his parents too much. I do know that his parents did get divorced a little bit. I think it was like 13, 14. So it was before all of this started, and he did have a little brother. But as far as his parents, I didn't look too much into them because his dad, last I checked, was actually still alive, and you know.
But wasn't his mom, she was in and out of the psychiatric ward though, correct? Is that what I was understanding?
Yes. So when his parents decided to get divorced, it was actually his mom's doing. She liked being a mom, but she wanted more of like that single life where she could go do things. And then his mom kind of wasn't really in the picture as much as his dad was. And in one of the interviews I watched, that was kind of a turning point for him, because it was right around the same age that he realized that he was gay, which I don't know if a lot of people know that, but he was gay. And he said that, in Ohio at that time, that he didn't know anybody else. He'd never met anybody that was gay, and it was not acceptable. And he didn't even have his mom at that time to kind of comfort or talk to about it. So he had to deal with it completely by himself. And even into his adult years, his family never knew. Yeah. So with his first victim, it was actually in Ohio. He had gone out in high school. He had a major drinking problem because of all of his issues that he was going through. And in 1978, he was driving home after being out drinking, and he saw a hitchhiker, and his name was Stephen Hicks. And when he stopped to pick him up, he was actually not even thinking about killing anybody, or he was actually just trying to be like a good Samaritan and take this guy home. Once he got into the car, they started talking, and they decided to go back to Jeffrey Dahmer's house and smoke some weed and drink some beers and just kind of hang out. And once he got him there, he realized he found him attractive. And at that moment, the guy was, saying nasty terms that, I'm not going to say, and kind of putting him down for making advances at him. And Jeffrey hit him in the head with a 10-pound dumbbell. And then after he hit him and kind of like, I don't want to say bashed his head in, but once he hit him with that, he realized it was too far to turn back, and he actually strangled him with that same dumbbell. And his dad was on vacation, so he was home alone. And he actually, it's kind of sad, he took the body and he hid it into the crawl space, and he left it there until the next morning to try to figure out what he was going to do with it. Well, and then that next morning is when he's like, I'm going to cut it into pieces, put it in bags, and bury it in the woods behind his house, which he did.
First off, you would think, obviously, when you have a dead body, you would assume that it would, I don't know if it would smell right away. I mean, I'm sure it would take a little bit. I mean, I'm sure it's not like bam, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know that.
Yeah. I know, to hide it in the crawl space, but nobody was home. So he didn't know what else to do with it. And he just hid it there until morning. And then I think it was the next night is when he decided to cut it up, and he put it into separate like grocery bags, and then just hid it in the woods behind his house. And it was still their property, so nobody was going to, come snooping around. And it's a lot of wooded, kind of leafy area. So even if it was disturbed, it wouldn't look.
And I kind of want to go into that, just like not just that, first killing, but like some of the other killings that he had. It was, from what I'm understanding, like it was his mom's home. Was it his mom's home at one point? I mean,
Well,
and it was relatives' houses that he was killing these people in. Now, were these relatives gone, or were they just like chilling upstairs?
no, so
And see,
he
that's the
actually,
thing.
yeah, so he went years after his first killing before he decided to kill again. And he actually enlisted into the military. And he was in the military for 3 years before he got discharged for drinking. And when he got discharged, he moved in with his grandma. And his
That's right.
grandma, yes, his grandma lived in Milwaukee. And because of what he did, his grandma tried to get him like on the straight and narrow. And he decided he was going to try to be a better person too. And he started going into church and got really heavy involved in the church and reading the Bible and trying to suppress those feelings. But yeah, a lot of the killings actually happened at his grandma's house. And I don't know if it was while she was at church, but a lot of it was at night.
Well, here's the thing, okay? If she was, let's say, at church, well, he did, his killing.
Mhm.
Let's just say, for an example, he did do that. I mean, let's factor it in. Okay, so maybe that person's gone for what, an hour and a half,
Mhm.
we'll say. I mean, I don't even think I could even do something like that in an hour and a half. I mean, then again, I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to be, I don't know, and especially if you're not really planning anything.
Well, so how he actually got away with it in his grandparents' house or his grandma's house is it was an older house, so it had a fruit cellar. And what he would do is he would have these men over, and actually every one of his victims was a male. He would meet these men at gay bars, and once he moved to Milwaukee, the gay scene there was actually a lot more thriving and was a little more acceptable. So he would go to these gay bars, and I think one of the ones was like 219. There was another one called Park Avenue that he was really popular into going, and then he would join like the Bath Club, and he would get these men and he would drug them. And it's actually a sleeping agent. It's no longer in the market, so you can't buy it. But he would drug them. He would give them about 4 pills, and it would knock them out between 5 to 6 hours, depending on their weight, completely render you unconscious. So you could do things like that, and you're not having somebody screaming, yelling. And then when he decided to kind of cut them up, for lack of a better term, he didn't use power tools. He would use a handsaw, things like that. So if he was quiet enough, I could see why his grandma didn't know that it was going on in the house. She did.
Well, I mean, I completely understand.
She made statements that she saw that there was a lot of men coming in and out, but she assumed that it was just, boyfriends or relationships of that nature. But never did she understand, or never did she think that it was like killings going on.
Do you think he chose men because, as far as him being gay, and maybe, like you said, he couldn't talk to, his mom about it or something like that? Do you think that is why he chose male victims?
I think it had something to do with, honestly, him being lonely. When he would do these bath clubs and these gay clubs, the bath club, it was more of a sexual experience for the people who were a part of it. It was a place where you could go, you could have one night stands, live out your fantasies and all of that. But a lot of Jeffrey Dahmer's fantasies wasn't so much sexual. He wanted to cuddle and just have that companionship. And he said that the farthest he wanted to go was maybe soft petting, but nothing farther than that. And he actually had an incident of where these men would want to go farther, and all he wanted was companionship. And that's why he would drug them. And he started out just by drugging these men and then just cuddling and laying with them until they woke up, and then they would go their separate ways. But he actually got kicked out of the bath club because he accidentally overdosed one of the guys he was with, and an ambulance had to be called, and the guy was taken away, and then he was kicked out of the bath club. And after that is when he started slowly picking victims and then actually killing them as well.
So how long was it before he decided he was going to start eating them?
So he
I know.
that's a harsh Well, he didn't technically mean, I don't want to say he didn't mean to kill them until later on. From when he killed Stephen Hicks in Ohio until the next murder was actually 9 years. And the next one was an absolute accident. This guy's name was also Stephen. He went to an Ambassador hotel and they were supposed to have a night together, and he had drugged him. And Jeffrey actually drank some of it and passed out. And when he woke up, the man was next to him dead. And he realized that somewhere in that process, he had blacked out and beaten him to death. And that was the first murder that really started all of it.
Okay, but how can we sit there and say, like, he didn't mean to?
Right.
Okay, I think that's where the issue comes in. Like, he didn't mean to. It was an accident.
Right. You're clearly drugging these men, so you're doing something wrong. But yeah, so he claims that this was an accident, and he actually bought a suitcase, put this man in it, got a taxi, took him back to his grandmother's house. And he didn't realize, or he didn't understand, like, how am I going to get rid of this body? What am I going to do? And that was the first time that he decided that he was going to, like, chop them into little pieces. So he actually skinned it. Like, he skinned his victim. He cut him into pieces, put him in trash bags, and then took the skeleton and put it into a bed sheet and crushed it with a sledgehammer, and then just threw it in the weekly garbage until the body was gone. Yeah.
I couldn't really imagine just saying, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it back in the, just take piece by piece and put it in my garbage. I mean, I think my garbage man might have a little bit of an issue with that smell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, oh my gosh, she's throwing away body parts. There's something wrong with this crazy broad.
He didn't decide to actually start eating them until he started running out of ways of disposing of the body. Eventually, he was kicked out of his grandma's house and he had to get an apartment. He got an apartment in a really bad neighborhood known for drugs. And so he kind of like was under the radar. Well, living in an apartment, people are going to know if you're dragging bodies out. So what he would do is he would cut them up. He would save certain parts of them. And then he would, I don't know how far you want me to get into it, but I read how he prepared it. He would saute it and kind of just grill it like a steak. And then he would eat them.
Okay, first off, it's not like I was gonna, say like, hey, I'm gonna dig through my spice rack and see what's great there.
No.
I mean, it's not like a joking manner, but it's like, oh, well, I'm gonna put some paprika on this, and it should be good.
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine, like, I don't even know what to say because like I said, it's not a joking manner, but to me, I want to know what goes through your mind.
Yeah.
To sit there and say, you know what, I think I'm going to try this now because I'm living in an apartment. So now I'm going to eat you and I'm just going to pull some stuff out. Like, do you just go to the grocery store and decide, well, I'm going to try this spice today?
Yeah.
I mean, what's going through your minds?
In his one interview, he said that he would prepare the parts like you would prepare a fillet. And that's how he would do it. And it would just be little chunks of steak. And that's how he did it.
Chunks of steak. Like,
I know it's awful to say, but that's how he would. Yeah, he would cut them up. And
my question is, what part of our body is like steak?
According to him, all of it.
Like, you're like little chunks of steak.
Yeah.
Well, no. Well, I think my arm might taste like steak today. So, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, is that the only, I mean, I'm hearing it, like, and I again, this is not a joking thing, but when you think about it, Tori, it's the rump roast.
Yeah. And he would cut them into so many different pieces. He did save, like I said, skinning's not the right word, but he would basically carve it off of the skeleton. And then he had a 5-gallon drum that he had acid in, and he would put the bones in there. He kept the skull in his refrigerator. And then he took Polaroids of each one of his victims before he did it.
Nicole asked, in cases like this, it makes you wonder if any past life have contributed to the psychiatric behavior.
So actually, it was probably, I'm trying to think of how old he might have been. It was after the murder at the Ambassador Hotel, but it was before he actually moved out and started kind of eating them. He was arrested, and he spent about a year in jail. He was arrested for sexual assault of a minor and for pleasuring himself in public, we'll say. And in that entire year, nobody evaluated him mentally. They didn't do any type of mental disorder tests, psychology, nothing. No. And his dad actually wrote a letter to the court begging for it. Because his dad thought that it was abnormal that he would try to pleasure himself in front of children in public. And the courts denied it, and they never tested him for anything, never ran anything on him. Which is sad, because later in life, he was actually diagnosed with 3 different mental disorders. That could have been, maybe if it would have been caught, he could have possibly avoided a lot of sadness.
But if any past, I think, as far as like the past is like past life, I mean, I don't know.
That's hard to say with a past life because you don't know. I think more of it, maybe the drugs or the narcotics that his mom had to take during pregnancy.
Well, it says one interesting thing about Dahmer is he was adopted and he was raised by a good family. Coming from Tori and the rump roast comment.
I did not read anywhere that he was adopted.
I didn't either. That was one thing I did not know, and I know that Tori has done a thing on him before. So I mean, she's too bad she's at work right now.
Otherwise... Yeah, I would love to know more about that because I never found anything about adoption, anything like that. And actually, even when he moved to Ohio, it was with the parents. It was Lionel and I think her name was Janice or Joyce or something of that nature. But yeah, so back to Jeffrey. He, the sad part about this whole thing is there were a lot of instances that I think the police could have stopped a lot of what was going on. Yeah, I agree with that statement, Tori.
I have to too. The only thing is I noticed like when I was watching something, there was like this boy that, got away. The cops got him and they brought him back to his apartment. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what is wrong with the cops? Like,
yes. So that little boy, actually, I did a lot of research on it because I was confused on why they took him back. So that boy was 14 years old. Jeffrey offered to pay him $50 to take provocative pictures. When he got him back to his apartment, he drugged him and somehow he got away and he was running down the street. There was a woman named Nicole Childress that actually saw him. She was 17 and she went to go help this little boy. And she went to go help this little boy and noticed that he was battered and bruised, and she ended up calling the police.
All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a break, and we'll get right back to that in just a second.
Meet Nicole Strickland, one of the leading San Diego paranormal researchers. Nicole offers a gentle and humble approach to working with spirit energies. Being the founder of the San Diego Paranormal Research Society, Nicole is no stranger to the unknown. Due to Nicole's vast knowledge of the paranormal, she is widely sought after for speaking engagements on topics like children of the paranormal, Paranormal Investigation 101 and 102, History of Spiritualism, and more. Not only does Nicole research the afterlife, but also writes about it, and is the author of several books pertaining to the paranormal and its history. She has appeared on television shows like My Ghost Story, Travel Channel's Famously Afraid, Good Morning San Diego, and more. Have a conference or event coming up? Contact Nicole on her website, authornicolestrickland.com. That's authornicolestrickland.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Remember to check out NicoleStrickland.com. I had to. She's great. She really is. She's a great person. Our show is great. She's just great in general. But anyways, back to our topic.
Oh, yeah. So what I was saying is that this 14-year-old boy he got out and he was running down the street naked. And this woman named Nicole came across him. She was 17 and she went to go help him. And the boy was beaten and he was bloody. And she called the police and the police showed up and Jeffrey had come up. He had made his way to the little boy and to the police. And Jeffrey told the police that this boy was his boyfriend who had drank too much and had gotten out of the house and he was just trying to get him back home so he could get him to bed. And instead of investigating, asking for, identification or anything of that nature, the cops just gave him back to Jeffrey and he took him home. And unfortunately, that boy was one of the 11 skulls that they found when Jeffrey was arrested. So what the police could have done in that situation could have changed that poor boy's life. And even Nicole, she said multiple times in her interview that she told the police something's not right. This boy is bleeding from lower regions. Like there has to be more. That he's 14. There's no way that he is the boyfriend of this grown man. But they did. They gave him right back to him, and Jeffrey took him back to the apartment. And unfortunately, he was one of the victims.
All right, and I'm gonna just say that Tori was wrong. It was.
You enjoyed it
wrong. I did. I had to. Tori is actually a really good friend of ours, and she got him a little confused. It's all right. We're human. It does. We still love her anyways. But I did, like I said, I still want to get back to like the killing thing because I really want to know, and I probably will never know this answer, or maybe I will. Maybe I should have. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I want to know, like when he was living with these relatives, how did they not know? Okay, well, that's. Sorry, I don't want to spread rumors or misinformation. She is correct.
She is. I truly believe that when he lived with his grandma, all she saw were these men coming in, and then it was always at night because it was after the clubs, and he would meet them at the clubs. And I don't know if maybe she would go to bed and then just assume the men left somewhere between her sleeping. I don't know, but when all the tools were found in his apartment, none of them were power tools. They were all hand saws and things like that. So,
okay, I guess the only thing is, okay, let's be realistic. If I don't have any grandchildren, so I'm going to use my grandchildren that do not exist. If my grandchild was sitting there killing somebody in my basement or wherever,
you think you would know?
Yeah, I would. I'm a light sleeper.
However, he only killed 2 people in his grandma's house.
Right, I know that. But what I'm trying to get at is, hear me out on this. Let's factor this in.
I'm not justifying his actions.
I'm not either. Okay. What I guess what I'm trying to get at is, naturally older people, they tend to not sleep. Okay, let's factor that in. Okay, because I mean, I know my grandma, and she's like pushing like 80, and that woman could go to bed at like 11 and then get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like, how do you get that? I mean, that's just little sleep. And she knows exactly what I do when I'm there, and when I do it, she's like, why are you going outside? Did you lock the door? Like, how did you hear that? Like, why are you up? Why do you care what I did? You know, and it's not like I was out killing on like a killing spree or something like that. But I'm just saying, like, most people kind of, well, you would think that most people would know what was going on in their own home.
Well, also with it being his grandma, because I know a lot of the things that his dad would mention over and over is that they just couldn't believe it. So it could be a little bit of denial, or maybe she was turning the other cheek. I don't know. I think it would be hard for someone to really sit down and be like, wow, my grandson or my son is killing people. I think you're going to try to find every other answer in the book before you resort to them being a murderer.
I mean, wouldn't you kind of think, like, I don't know. I guess if it were me and it was my son, and it'd be me. And this is just my opinion. If my son was out killing people, and God forbid that never happens, but you know, it is what, I can't say it is what it is. I'm just hoping that it never happens, and it's not going to happen. That's the way I look at it. I guess what I'm trying to get at is I would feel like I failed as a parent. Like, what did I do wrong? And again, it goes back to, you know, we were talking about, you know, when his mom was pregnant with him and all those drugs that she did take, you know, the morphine and stuff like that. I mean, probably didn't help.
That, and I think maybe, not that anesthesia is bad, but, you know, in the 60s, 70s, anesthesia at such a young age, and just the trauma of the divorce. And, you know, I truly am someone that believes that when you have a mental illness, it's something you're born with and you can't help it. And if you leave it untreated, or, you know, it can result in some really bad things. And unfortunately, after he was convicted, they did run a bunch of tests, and they ended up diagnosing him with 3 different mental disorders, which is really sad that it took that long for someone to offer him some type of help in that source.
Okay, let's get to how they like found out that he
Okay, so
I know we're like, sometimes,
well, you know,
so off topic sometimes.
Well, there's one really interesting fact that I did not know about Jeffrey Dahmer, and I never heard it anywhere. But before he was caught, he used to run zombie experiments on his victims. Before he killed him, he would drug them, and he did what was called a drilling method. And he would drill holes into their skull and slowly inject acid with a 1cc syringe to try to numb the brain enough that they would be zombie-like, and he could have a partner who kind of did whatever he said. And it took a lot to find that, but that was something I never heard before, and I thought it was really interesting. But he was injecting the acid into their brain, and it was killing them too fast. And he had tried to do that a couple of times, and I think that's where the number increased quite a bit. But yeah, so he would drill into the skull and insert acid into brains, trying to make them more of like a zombie.
But wouldn't he have known that, like, the whole acid thing, experimenting with animals?
For the animals, that was to dissolve the muscle and tissue and skin. That wasn't.
I know.
Injected into the brain.
Right, but what I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna say what.
But I mean, that's crazy? And he did, and I mean, some of them, depending on how much acid he would put in their brain, they would live for a few hours. But the whole concept was to have someone that he could just say, "Hey, let's cuddle," or just leave me alone for 20 minutes. I don't know. It was crazy. But back to how he got caught.
Hang on, though. I gotta do this. I gotta do this. Your husband.
Yes, that's the zombie comment. That's my husband.
Okay. I mean, zombie. That's crazy. That's crazy, but it would have been cool if it worked. Let's be honest. It would have been cool if it worked. Okay. We would have like a bunch of zombies running around.
Yes. But now by that comment, I think I might have to worry. Reenie, if I go missing.
Don't worry, I have your address. Sorry. Okay, go back. I had to, he's right. We would have all loved to see a real zombie. Let's be honest. I would have too. I've been like, that is the coolest thing. But okay, go ahead.
This is a different type of show now. So the way that Jeffrey Dahmer actually got caught is, so he had, again, offered someone $50 to pose for some nudes, got this man back to his apartment, and decided that he wanted it to be more of a bondage style kind of photo shoot, so he handcuffed him. Thankfully, the guy had the sense about him that something wasn't right, and he actually hit Jeffrey in the head and took off running. He ran out of the apartment and ran down the street. And when he was running down the street, he was butt naked. He had handcuffs hanging from one of his wrists, and he passed the police officer. And the cop stopped him, which I'm hoping in any situation the cop would stop, and was like, "What are you doing? Why are you running naked down the street?" And this guy told him what had happened and led the police back to Jeffrey's apartment. When they got into the apartment, they kind of did a quick search, and they found severed heads in his refrigerator, along with a couple sets of hands and a couple sets of male parts that had all been severed from bodies and put into the fridge. So they arrested him right then and there, called the FBI, had, the whole investigation team come out, and they ended up finding 11 skulls, 15 different body parts from hearts, biceps. They were all cut into little candy squares. And they found heads in the refrigerator. And I think they said all in all, he had a total of 16 victims' body parts spread throughout the apartment. He had a 5-gallon drum full of acid where he was kind of dissolving the bones. And that's how he got caught.
I guess Bill had a thing here. Would he not be affected by eating acid inside the victims?
When he was injecting them with the acid, he never meant to actually kill them. He was simply just trying to make them slightly brain dead. But he never actually said that he was going to kill them and eat them. And after they died, he severed their heads and kind of like ate other parts. And when he would eat things, he would eat like the liver, the kidneys. He did eat biceps, ate pieces of hearts. So it wasn't like he was injecting the entire body.
Yeah, but still, obviously he's drilling holes, injecting this acid.
Yeah, it was about 1 cc worth of acid.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I think as soon as that boy was actually, and you are right, when the cops did find him, I think the whole it wouldn't have gotten as far as it did.
Well, and that wasn't the only one. There was actually a guy who I forget his name, but he was having car trouble outside one of the bars, and Jeffrey offered to help him and drive him to the house to get a battery, and invited him in for coffee and drugged him. And the guy ended up getting away and was in the hospital, and told the hospital and told the police what had happened, that he had been raped, he had been drugged, gave them Jeffrey's name, his house, everything. And the cops didn't believe him, unfortunately, because he was a man of color. They thought he made it up. And that's the other thing is all of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims were either African-American or Asian.
Why do you think that? Like, why do you think he chose certain races over the others?
I think it was the men that he was attracted to. that he chose. I think it was one of those things that, and I don't understand, because some of the men that he did choose were also gay. So I mean, he might have been able to have a relationship with them, but I do think that a lot of the victims were men that he was attracted to, and it was just a fantasy that he lived out. Because he, even before he started killing people, he actually stole a mannequin from a retail store, and he would use it at home to cuddle with. So it was just that male body that he was attracted to.
Yeah, but at the same time, a mannequin is not like warm and
Mhm.
uh, you understand. I mean,
Mhm.
they're not. So, I mean, if he's really just looking for with, I mean, really, in all actuality, why kill them? Their
Right.
bodies aren't going to stay warm forever.
Yep.
You know, they're A, not going to smell nice,
Well,
you know,
but so when he would drug them, they would be out for about 5-6 hours. So he would have those 5-6 hours to do whatever he wanted to do before he killed them.
but who wants to cuddle for 5 or 6 hours? Let's be honest here, okay?
Jeffrey? I don't
I mean,
know.
and I understand what you're saying, but like I
Mhm.
couldn't like imagine like
Yeah.
having to cuddle with somebody for 5 or 6. I
Mhm.
like it's like that body warmth after a while. It's like, man, I am way too just get away from me.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like I couldn't just to me that just seems odd.
Mhm.
Like maybe get like if you really want to cuddle with something and you want it alive, get a dog or a cat. Um so you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
would just
I
be my
just
thing. But then again, I mean, at the same time, he started I mean, he was like
Mhm.
killing animals before he decided to.
Yeah.
I mean, because like I said, when I watched that, I don't know. It was basically how he was like a loner.
Mhm.
He had some friend, well, kind of some friends, and like how he was basically stalking this guy that was running. And that makes me question it too. Like, did he just randomly go to the bar and say, "Yep, that's it," or was he
Mhm.
stalking these guys?
You know, I don't know. One of the things I said when I was doing this is I would have loved to sit down with Jeffrey Dahmer and literally pick his brain on why he did the things he did, but unfortunately, he was not in prison very long before he himself was murdered.
I mean, okay, but let's factor this in. Did he really think that he was going to be able to survive prison? Honestly.
I don't think that he would have ever I don't think he believed he was ever gonna get caught. Um, I think that he truly believed he was smarter than well, let's be honest, he was smarter than the average bear. I think the average IQ is like 95 to 105, and the average serial killer, their IQ I think is 94, and Jeffrey Dahmer's IQ is 145. So he legally is considered a genius, and he knew that, and he probably assumed that he was smarter and he wouldn't get caught.
But he could have channeled that in to do something really good in
Mhm.
life, you know, instead
Absolutely.
of trying to create, I don't know, eating people and trying
Mhm.
to create this quote
I
unquote zombie thing.
Mhm.
Or I mean, I don't know how in his right minds he would actually think that that was going to work.
I think people get caught up in a world of fantasy, and I think for him, he had these desires and these voices that were going on in his head, and he was just in his own world, and I don't think he really logically thought out, like, "Can I really get I'm gonna get away with this?" Or I just don't like you said, his right mind, and I don't think he really was in his right mind.
But you would assume with somebody that high of an IQ, you know, they
Right.
would do something for the
Mhm.
greater good. And he probably, if he didn't go and do what he did, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that he would have done something for the greater good. But
Well,
that would bring me to the next thing, uh,
yeah.
as far as what Nicole asked about like a past life type thing.
Mhm.
I mean, could he in his past life maybe have done something great and then maybe this life, it's kind of like, okay, well, I mean, I don't really know how past lives work, like
Mhm.
110%. And, I, from what I'm understanding, and maybe Nicole can chime in on this if she is still in the chat. As
When
far
you-
as that goes, but somebody just asked, how do you go from cuddling to eating somebody? That is actually a really good question. I
well,
hate to say that. I mean,
yes.
and it's true. How do you say, okay, I'm going to cuddle with you for 6 to 8 hours, and then I'm just, I'm going to have you for dinner,
So
at the end of the day.
right. And I totally agree with you. I think a lot of it does come down to that one of the disorders that he was diagnosed with was psychotic disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know a lot about mental disorders or mental illness or anything like that, but he had 3 going against him. And I think a lot of his conversations and his interviews, he referred to his voices, and he would refer to suppressing the urges and quieting the voices. So I don't know if everything he did was technically him or these voices. I mean, the voices were him, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if those voices were the ones telling him, like, oh, you're not going to be accepted for the way you are. These men are going to tell on you. These men are going to rat you out. And then that's when
But I
because
mean,
at the same time, if you're drugging people, I mean, you're going to get arrested for drugging them alone.
well, of
So he
course,
figured to get rid of them.
but I guess at the same time, I mean, it is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
You go from cuddling to eating them. And
well, let's be honest. I love to cuddle my husband, but there's been days that I want to kill him. So I won't.
know, but I mean, if
there's
you're
been
going to
days
start
I'm
eating
just
them
like,
for dinner, we're going to have some big problems. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, you're
I
going to
mean,
find them in the refrigerator, like in a little
if he doesn't
jar
act right, maybe.
pieces. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to me, I guess, like, because we technically are not killers,
Right.
and we don't technically know what's going through somebody's mind.
We're the voices that he's hearing and what they're telling him to do. We just don't know.
Um,
But.
Yeah, Nicole said, I agree with
Mhm.
mixing up fantasy and reality. Where did this desire to perform these experiments come from? That is that is honest to godly true, because like I said, I seen someplace where his dad was a chemist. Okay. Could be wrong, but I mean, that would, but if his dad wasn't, okay, we'll say that he wasn't. He was that smart, and maybe, in school he was taking chemistry and
Mhm.
with somebody that has a IQ to that
Like
level.
145.
Um,
Yeah, and that's true. He could have had interest in Gothic doctors too, and maybe that's where he learned it from. It was a practice that one of them might have tried.
right, exactly. So I mean, you can't rule that out.
Right.
But like I said, I mean, he was a very intelligent person, so
Mhm.
it's not like he knew what he was doing. He
Did.
knew I mean, I will give him credit. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to figure out how to make a zombie unless it's
Mhm.
like probably out of paper mache, you know.
Well, and
I
for him, he absolutely knew what he was doing. The only thing that kind of struck me as odd is when he was convicted. So during his court cases, he was convicted of, I think, 16 life terms, which is like 957 years of some sort. But he legitimately like felt remorse. And I found that odd because not a lot of murderers do, but he like wrote a letter to the families and he apologized and he said that he knew what he did was wrong and he truly, truly was sorry. And I like I said, I really found that odd because you don't see that in a lot of murder cases where, the murderer apologizes to the family unless they're just trying to get a lighter sentence. But he actually was remorseful for it.
I don't know if like that was me, I'd be like, you know what, I can't forgive you what you did
Exactly.
to, this person in my family or whatnot, or my friend, or
Oh, I would have been.
I've been like, your apology, your letter, just
Mhm.
F you, and that's the end of it. Like, don't even
Exactly.
bother.
Yeah. But I mean, he did end up getting, I mean, karma always comes back around, people. Remember, karma comes around. He ended up actually getting murdered in prison. He was in prison for, I think, about a year, and a fellow inmate beat him to death with a broomstick in the bathroom. So he himself was murdered, and he felt, and as awful as it sounds, I hope he felt the fear that his victims felt.
Oh, exactly.
Mhm.
So I know that our show is coming to an end.
Mhm.
I know, so sad. We'll be back next week. And remember to check out Afterlife Chronicles right after the show. Great show. Listen, because, well, it's a great show. And, Nicole's got a lot of cool things going on. So you might want to check out her show. Again, watch Afterlife Chronicles, and we will see you guys next week.